we're going to transition to a little bit further afield from this digital transformation, one that is just in the infancy, and that's virtual reality. Virtual reality, by many people's accounts, has become real in 2016. We're starting to see it. Kids are wanting it for their birthday, for Christmas. It's popping up on Amazon, and we're just at the beginning. So I've asked two friends to come share this with us for a bit. Luc Lam, you might have met with the virtual reality demo. If you didn't have a chance, really sorry. But how many of you tried the virtual reality demo? How was it? Fantastic, cool, and scary. So there's one point where you're slicing fruit. It doesn't make any sense. Anyway, you're slicing fruit with a samurai sword, and you really are slicing fruit, and you feel when you hit the bomb, you feel it. And there's this space in the floor in front of you that is an open space like to the floor below. And I walked up to it, and I said, I got to do it. And I jumped, and it hurt. It was scary, and I said, and I pulled back, and I said, I got to do this again. and then Luke's partner, Mark, said, you know, we've learned that our brains are hardwired. We have evolved in order to have spatial recognition. And our friend from Rand Corporation happened to be there, and she has a PhD in psychology. She said, this is deeply embedded because you don't want to run into something that's, you know, going to eat you or, cause you to bleed. So I felt, and I knew there was a floor there, but it sure didn't feel like it. So Luc Lam with Good Yeti, who's been our VR partner, and Sam Glassenberg, my very good friend for a number of years now, who has been running a company called GTX, and I'm very excited to report to you that Sam's company has hit an exit. It has been acquired just this week. So Sam and Luke, join me on stage. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Pretty big deal. Thanks for being here. So, Luke, join me over here, and Sam, you've got a few opening remarks.
Yeah, sure. So I was asked to just share a little bit about virtual reality, just some exciting visuals. Does this start pushing buttons? There we go. Well, back one. Oh, here we go, back button. Great, you got a sneak preview. All right, so I've been very lucky. I've spent my career more or less building the Matrix. That's been my job at several companies. I began my career at Lucasfilm and spent many years after that at Microsoft, managing the DirectX team. Literally, my job there was to build the Matrix. One of the things that we're exceedingly good at in the video games industry is taking advantage of major industry trends, semiconductor trends like Moore's Law, other trends, to make video games look better. And that was my job at Microsoft and elsewhere, right? Identifying ways that we could exploit Moore's Law and other trends to make video games look real in a 5 to 10 year time horizon. And eventually all the systems that we would build and design and things that we would standardize would make their way into Xbox and PC, and then 5 or 6 years down the road, they end up on your iPhone or your iPad or your Android device as we standardize them. And with video games, it's easy to see how we've exploited Moore's Law over the last 25 years. This right here is the most compelling video game character that you could find in 1989. So you'll see how far we've come in the last 25 years, and then you can just think about what that's going to look like as we continue this growth at the same rate over the next, or the accelerating rate over the next 25 years. So we've been able to achieve these drastic improvements in a few short years. By the turn of the millennium, we basically were able to start getting realistic, compelling characters that were still made up of very, very big triangles, because this is what the hardware at the time could deliver. But less than a decade later, we can achieve film quality visuals in real time at 60 frames per second. And by now, little bit hard to see, but we've really crossed, if you look at video games today, right, the cutting edge, we've really crossed the uncanny valley. We have totally lifelike characters with fully expressive emotions, and this is when things get really interesting. It's not a coincidence that VR is starting to happen right now. We have a number of converging trends that are causing this VR revolution to take place and making compelling VR possible in the immediate future. So now that we've achieved this level of realism on screen, the next logical step is to go into the screen. And I've seen things. I'm on a few games industry advisory boards, so I get to see all these behind closed doors technology demos that blow my mind. One particular VR demo that I experienced really made me realize what the coming years are going to look like. This was created by NVIDIA, Oculus, and Weta, the special effects team behind The Hobbit. You enter basically the special room, you put on a VR headset, and you're immersed in the Dragon's Keep, this giant castle from the movie The Hobbit, with this giant dragon Smaug flying and taunting you overhead. It's fully interactive. And with innovations called things like asynchronous time warp, these experiences can respond to your head movements faster than your optical system can recognize it. And so what that means is your disbelief is totally suspended. Your brain literally knows that you are there, because as you move, the world moves with you. The dragon really becomes real. And I could actually feel the heat of the dragon's breath. And when I took off the headset, I realized it was just the heat from this wall of exhaust fans that were needed to cool this other wall of experimental, unreleased graphics processors that were needed to keep this thing running at 120 frames per second. But in 6 years, you're going to have that same compute power running on your phone, and it's going to be thinner and flexible and cooler than the phone that you carry today. And so the scene was so realistic that I had to look around and try to find some giveaway, right, that would tell me that this was being run on a computer, sort of like when you're in a dream and you're sort of looking for a giveaway that tells you that it's not real. So eventually what I did is I'm in this room and I have this headset on and I get down on my hands and knees and I start looking at the ground and I start looking at the individual treasure, looking at the individual coins, because there are millions of coins in this scene. And finally I look really closely and I see that one of the shiny coins are actually octagons, right? They're made out of triangles. And finally, I'd found the triangles, and this was the dead giveaway that this was VR, this wasn't reality. And so a few weeks later, I was having drinks with a friend of mine who works at Weta, and I gave him a hard time about this. All right, you had me until I saw the coins were all octagons. And so he reaches into his pocket, because apparently Kinians aren't the only schmucks that walk around with coins in their pockets. And he reached into his pocket, and he pulls out a gold Hobbit coin from the movie. And son of a bitch, it's an octagon. And it was at this point that I realized that humanity was fated to one day be unable to discern virtual reality from this one. And so in the next decade or less, right, Moore's law combined with high-density curved displays, eye tracking, lightweight computing is going to completely change the VR form factor. On the second floor, if you tried the demo, it's this HTC Vive last generation VR headset. I think we're going to look back at VR headsets of today the same way we look back at car phones from the late 1980s, right? Like, it's a mobile phone. We look at it now, that's not a mobile phone, that's a brick. And so we're going to look back at the VR headsets of the day. That's not a VR headset, that's a brick tied to your head. And so the advances in augmented reality technology, such as Magic Leap, where they have this upcoming photonic light field chip. We come up with the best names for stuff in virtual reality. It projects directly onto your retina, and it enables this seamless mixing of virtual reality and real reality. And this is actually being developed just a few miles away from here in Florida. And so this is where things start to get very interesting. Now I'll hand it back to you, Rob.
Great. Thanks, Sam. So I thought it was funny, Sam, you said, I've seen things. I was like, wow, we're really going to hear something today. It was like, I see dead people. Sort of like
I've seen things, Neo.
Yeah.
A little more Matrix, a little less
So
M. Night Shyamalan.
let's talk about that. You're both, Luke, your company, Good Yeti, is, how long ago did you start it?
Started about a little bit over a year ago.
So it's brand new.
Yes.
Right. How'd you get involved in this? Was it something you were doing before, or?
Yeah, I had a relationship with my last job at LG when I was running a consumer insight lab. So over there, my main responsibility was trying to drive at research to understand trends 3 to 5 years into the future.
Right.
And of course, virtual reality was at the top of that list. So what happened was I was invited to attend the Silicon Valley virtual reality show around April last year. And when I was there, I was just so blown away by the developer-led community, how passionate every single person was in there, and also the disconnect between those people and the general public and understanding what virtual reality was.
Great.
So at that point, I was pretty much hooked and decided to quit my job and start this company.
What's an example, and Sam, you're welcome to answer this too, but what's an example of a disconnect between what virtual reality is or might become and what the public thinks about it?
So if you explain virtual reality to somebody who has never seen it in any context, they picture 3D glasses because that's what it looks like, right? So their mental paradigm is incorrect. So what happens is when you take a person and you put the glasses on and they get that sense of presence, this has happened before, where they look at it and they say, wow, and then I physically grab their head and I turn it so that they can see that it's not just a static three-dimensional image, but it's the immersion. And then they get a second wow that comes out of that.
Yeah. Sam, what does the public need to know about this virtual reality thing and where it might be going, the stuff you've seen 5 years, 7 years?
Look, I think that, so in terms of what the public need, I mean, basically this is one of those things where what we find is you have to really experience it in order to really get a sense of what it is. And that's I think very difficult from a marketing standpoint. We're seeing billions of dollars being invested now into VR, and I think because we have this, typically the games industry has experienced tremendous growth in the last few years because we've now had 1 billion people start playing games that weren't playing games 5 years ago, and that's because the barrier to entry has dropped, right? Oh, you already have this phone in your pocket, and to make phone calls, and now you can start playing games on it. Virtual reality creates a new barrier to entry right now, especially because we have expensive hardware. We're having billions of dollars being poured in from an investment standpoint. In the immediate term, a lot of people are going to lose money. Because it's going to take a while for it to become pervasive.
That's the dance.
That's the dance, exactly.
Dance.
Even Palmer Luckey, even the founders of Oculus are saying, whoa, that's too much money. The checks are too big. Hold on, guys, you're not going to make these returns so quickly. But we do know that in the 5 to 10 year time horizon, this is going to become pervasive.
Wow. So obviously we can see the impact from gaming, from a gaming perspective and entertainment and all that, but virtual reality goes way beyond gaming. What are some examples of applications or opportunities, whether they're currently happening or on the books for the future?
So I think that enterprise level virtual reality is going to be a direct outgrowth of all the technology that's happening today. So the biggest shift in where virtual reality was a decade ago versus now is the drive of mobile technology in order to be able to lead this. So even the high-end consoles have a lot of technology in there that was a direct outgrowth of mobile. And so with that, at the enterprise level, we're going to be able to see it also with people doing probably virtual offices, the ability to go on an airplane and be able to take everything that they need with them and have their entire field of view really be their workspace.
Great. Sam, thoughts?
So I should clarify something. So GTX is a new company. The company that I sold was Funtactics. That was the one that was acquired earlier this week. And so the reason I clarify that, so Funtactics does games for Hollywood movies.
Right.
Very traditional.
Which you were a pioneer of that.
We had a lot of fun. It was making games for Hunger Games and Mission Impossible and Rocky. That was a great business. The GTX is actually applying game technology in other verticals, specifically in healthcare, in medical and surgical training.
Okay.
And what I would say there actually is that virtual reality is great. There are a lot of interesting applications. I think augmented reality and mixed reality has even more applications in enterprise and these other areas. But I think actually, if you look at the games industry before you even look at VR and entertainment in general, the games industry before you jump into VR and AR is already 20 to 30 years ahead of education, of healthcare, of all these other industries, right? In terms of how we deal with engagement, user experience, analytics, all these other elements. And so I think VR is going to be huge, but I think before we even get there, we've got 20 years of innovation in games, right? That when you unleash this stuff on other verticals, has has the potential for tremendous disruption and opportunity to solve a lot of problems before you even start, before you strap anything to your head.
Yeah, it used to be that all of the serious leading edge technology was coming out of military, and there's still a lot that does, but now it's coming out of gaming.
Right. Well, we live in a world, we talk about, disruption and new platforms. Gaming, we come from a world where we're a $100 billion a year industry. The vast majority of that revenue comes from platforms that didn't exist 5 years ago and devices that didn't exist a year and a half ago. Right? So we are constantly being forced to innovate, and we've got this test bed of over a billion people playing games, right, with which we can constantly test and distill our fine whiskey.
Well, we're coming up to the end of the segment, but this isn't the last of virtual reality. Later on, we'll address it in a different format. But it seems to me that an industry like gaming is very interesting because, as you said, Sam, it is forced to innovate in significant ways all the time, because if you don't, literally 18 months later, you're dead. And that's, generous. So it would be interesting for other industries to say, how does gaming cope? How do you come together in a film production sort of manner and recoalesce around and have a portfolio of options on the future, because only a few of them will actually work out? It's an interesting opportunity. A couple times President Fox was mentioning the requirement to lift people up and that training and education would be critical. I've got to believe that virtual reality, augmented reality will be significant in a scalable, as the price comes down, low-cost, scalable, immersive solution to that problem. I loved your comment, Sam, about on-screen to into the screen, because and that's a great metaphor, but it's a thin metaphor. Once you've tried it, as you said, Luke, once you've tried it, you realize I'm not even in the screen. It's not a screen anymore. This will be like when in 10 years, when we're 25 years, when we're all driving around in electric vehicles, we'll still call it the gas pedal, right? So the experience we'll have will become screenless, and it's something that in the 90s I was thinking about something called the invisible interface, and the interface will eventually not be a brick. Eventually it will fade away. Luke, you said sense of presence. The whole sense of presence changes, and we can manipulate it. And it'll be interesting to see the dialogue between a human sense of presence and what the technology allows us to do. And I have to say, kudos to you. Great experience at LG, great company, seeing an opportunity and making a really big shift. Both of you have done that, and we're in awe of that. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Rob.
Thanks, Sam. Really nice.